It's good to be together this morning. Was thinking a little bit about this phrase. Maybe we've caught ourselves saying it, or we've heard others say it to ourselves. I know it's a phrase that I find myself saying a good bit. Maybe I hear others maybe say it. If you're in a situation where maybe you recognize someone is maybe misplaced something, maybe forgot to do something, maybe they're worried that it might affect somebody, and you say, "Oh, don't worry about it, no worries, it's okay, we got you, you're good." And we appreciate when individuals can have that kind of mentality. It's helpful, it's encouraging with all the stress and everything else going on in life. It helps when we can have an attitude where we can see a little bit of the brevity, the lighter side of things, and not feel like things are as dire as what others might want us to think about them. And along that lines, I couldn't help, but there was one particular individual that a lot of people are looking at, clicking on his page, on his TikTok. I don't know what that is. I'm not familiar with social media that much, but here's this guy. He is viral. I don't know if you've seen a picture of him or not, or seen anything. He has posted a picture. Actually, it was a video. It was like a short little 10-second video of him just skateboarding down the street, and he has this little ocean cranberry juice. He's just sipping it, and then he starts lip singing this song. And it has gotten over millions and millions of views. People started sending him money. He's gotten over $10,000. And I was like, "What? Why are people sending this guy? They don't even know who he is. Like, here's some money." And they interviewed the guy, and they said, "Yeah," he said, "money keeps pouring. I'm up to 10,000. The money keeps pouring in." He says, "I'm going to be able to get a better form of transportation now. I mean, I use my skateboard all the time." He said, "I'm going to be giving some money to my mother." He said, "I'm going to give $5,000 to my mother." And I was kind of intrigued by this, so I started digging a little bit and reading some of the comments and the responses people have had. And then it started making sense. Over and over again, if you read the comments of why people click on his video, watch it, and encourage other people to watch it, they're sharing it. People are actually sending him money. People are in a climate now where they are so obsessively worried about disease, the election, the fate of our country. It seems the weight is just coming down so hard. They saw this guy just seem like he's just enjoying an afternoon where it doesn't seem like he's concerned about any of this. And so many people are saying they're appreciative of it. Somebody, they'd have no idea who it is, but they said, "We need a moment of levity, a moment of inspiration, a moment where it seems that this guy, whatever is going on in his life," and it is so odd, they just seem to just kind of tap into whatever it is. He just seems to not have a care in the world. Then they were interviewing him, and actually he's got a whole lot of financial problems, and so the money is actually helping him. But I couldn't help but, as you see the people making comments about it and actually kind of in awe of it, reminded me of a situation that we read in what was just read a little bit ago in Mark chapter 4. And a great lesson, actually, that Jesus was trying to encourage us to develop that we can have if we focus on the right things. There in Mark chapter 4, we just read it. I'm just going to read it one more time again. There, that short text there in verse 35 says, "On that day when evening came, he said to them, 'Let us go over to the other side.' Leaving the crowd, they took him along with them in the boat, just as he was, and other boats were with him. And there arose a fierce gale of wind, and the waves were breaking over the boat so much that the boat was already filling up. Jesus himself was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him and said to him, 'Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?'" In many ways, this is what the sentiment has been, is that it seems like this guy just kind of just take a little stroll on a skateboard and just kind of take a little sip of his juice and enjoying a song, and he's singing along to it. See, most people are saying, instead of saying, aren't you concerned about all the things going on? They're saying, we're so thankful that you remind us maybe we shouldn't be so concerned. And they are appreciative. They're sending all these kind words and comments of saying, we need people to kind of inspire us to not be so pressured and not be so disturbed. And that's exactly what Jesus was teaching in this moment. A moment where so many times we're going to be saying these, we get ourselves in such hysterics that almost we feel like we almost get mad if somebody else isn't as concerned about it as we are. So it's like you see someone, maybe they watch the debate, and they're all worried about it and so obsessed about it. And then maybe see somebody is maybe just enjoying maybe a little calm afternoon and say, aren't you worried about this? You always see their face like, aren't you concerned about what's going on? And I'm not saying that there aren't reasons, for legitimate reasons, for things to be of serious nature. I'm not saying that. What about this situation? Was this a legitimate reason to be alarmed? They thought they were going to die. Water is pouring into the boat. They absolutely have no idea how they're going to get out of it. And they look at Jesus and they're irritated by it. Aren't you concerned? Why are you not as concerned as we are? We're perishing. And I love his response. In verse 39, he got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, hush, be still. And the wind died down, and it became perfectly calm. And he said to them, why are you afraid? Think about that. It's a legitimate question, a great question in our climate. Are you afraid? I don't know, are you afraid? What are you afraid of? Are there legitimate things that we should be terrified by, things we maybe are so concerned about? We need answers. We need legitimate answers. We're following all the latest developments, and we have to catch what the news report comes out because we have to know what the next one is, because we have to have an answer. We have to know what's going to happen because all these things are crashing down on us, right? Well, the whole world is right now at that point. It's so many people. And what was encouraging, what was refreshing to me was a reminder of what advantage we have as Christians, of what Jesus is trying to encourage you and I, of what we have as Christians. We have the opportunity to provide what this random guy did on his TikTok account. I thought, if this random guy could provide hope, can't Christians? Shouldn't Christians? Shouldn't it be Christians who are providing that kind of sense of relief and that kind of sense of calm? Sometimes you see what's going on and the dialogue, and sometimes the debating, and sometimes the frustrations that are relayed amongst Christians. And sometimes you wonder, are we able to keep our calm head? Are we able to provide hope? Are we able to provide people and point to the right source of what truly offers calm? And what's amazing here is that Jesus tells us sometimes the way that we offer calm is not resolving the situation. And sometimes we think that we've sometimes, well, things will get better when? Well, when this election is over, or when this happens, or when this happens, or when this happens. And again, I'm not diminishing the fact that there are legitimate things that need to be resolved, and things. Certainly, yes, elections will have consequences on where national policy and where we are as citizens. But I'm talking about in the midst of that. Is the only way we can have peace until we figure out how all this resolves itself? Is that the only way we can finally actually be able to sit down and enjoy a moment with our family? And enjoy a pleasant conversation, but just enjoy the minimal, just mundane things, the little things of life? Because that's what it was. People are, I encourage you to look it up. I think it's dog face. I don't know what that means. That's his line on name. Dog face something. And it is just overflowing with comment after comment of, this is what we need. It's odd. But that's why people are sending him money, and that's why people are putting so much attention on it. Because people are flat out just tired. They're frustrated. They're frustrated because of the frustration. and that's the nature of this world. And the beauty of Christianity, the beauty of what Jesus offers, is the ability to be at peace. And that's what he's showing here. That's what his question is in verse 40. He says, why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith? They became very much afraid and said to one another, who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? Jesus later makes a statement that I think comes to conclusion and resolves what they're puzzled about here. They don't understand this, and a lot of things weren't resolved for them until after the resurrection. A lot of things that Jesus did, Jesus said, it didn't really even make any sense until later things came to full fruition. And one of the things I believe that truly would have made this event kind of click was a statement Jesus made to Pilate about the nature of his kingdom. Remember, he makes a statement about, he said, are you a king? Remember the question Pilate asked him? Go over there to the book of John and notice this dialogue that takes place between Jesus and Pilate. I mean, the nature of this conversation sheds a lot of light on what happens here in Mark chapter 4. It's there in John chapter 19, or chapter 18. John chapter 18, I want to read verse 33. John 18, verse 33 says, therefore Pilate entered again into the praetorium and summoned Jesus and said to him, are you the king of the Jews? Jesus answered, are you saying this on your own initiative, or did others tell you about me? Pilate answered, I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation of the chief priests delivered you to me. What have you done? Jesus answered, my kingdom, notice, my kingdom is not of this world. I have interests that are beyond what's happening right here in this universe. Now, make no mistake, Jesus is the ruler of this universe. That's why he calms the sea. But why did he demonstrate that he was virtually unconcerned about the chaos in this universe and rebuke and question, where is your faith about the nature of my kingdom in relation to this universe? Jesus is calling us what? Out of the world. Yes. To be able to say that the kingdom has transformed us out of this present world into a different realm. That's the point of Colossians. We're going to look at some other things that Colossians teaches us, but go to the book of Colossians. The whole letter of the Colossians is based on this premise that we have literally been translated out of this domain, and our interests, our thoughts, our concerns are otherworldly. The things that transpire here have virtually no connection and cannot affect anything about this otherworldly kingdom that we've been translated into. Read there in Colossians chapter 1. Colossians chapter 1, notice in verse 11. He says, he has strengthened us with all power according to his glorious might for the attaining of all steadfastness and patience, joyously giving thanks to the Father who has qualified us to share in the inheritance of the saints of light. In other words, in the midst of all the chaotic, ridiculous, painful, destructive things that were happening in this universe at that time, he says Christians are to be a light. Did you catch that? The saints in light. What's the light? The light is that we can be thankful. We can be joyful. We can be hopeful. Why? in verse 13, because he has rescued us from what? From the domain of darkness. That is this world. This world is the domain of darkness. And guess what? He has rescued us from it. He's taken us out of it. Or have some still keeping many of their interests in this world. Still so overconsumed, still so overly bothered, still so overly stressed by every little minutia of everything that doesn't happen the way that we want this world to be orchestrated. And then we wonder, why is it that we're not having an effect in the nature of the kingdom? And that's something that we all struggle with. That's why for me it was a wake-up call. I watched that, I looked at that, I was like, that's the wake-up call. That's the light. Not who's right, who's wrong. Now, there's a part of that, obviously. Yes, truth answers those questions. And truth sheds light on what is right and what is wrong. But in the pursuit of truth, remember that was something else that Pilate was struggling with. Remember what his question was? What is truth? What is truth? In other words, is your truth going to help me with my problem here? Is the truth that you're telling me that you are the truth? You came to bear witness to the truth. What truth? The truth that if I figure out what the right answer of this section in life, that it's going to calm this mob down? It's going to give me some promise and some power or permanence or calm in my region that I'm ruling over? Those are the things that were on Pilate's mind. I've got an angry mob here that's about to revolt. And that's what I'm worried about. And you know what Jesus was trying to help Pilate recognize? I think you're worried about the wrong things. You're so obsessive about this mob that's about to unleash its fury that actually affected how he viewed Jesus, who is the truth. And notice again the nature of that conversation. Go back there to John. And notice again how Jesus tries to get him to think about this. There it says in John chapter 17, or John chapter 18. Beginning in verse 36, he says, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting, so that I would not be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this world. Therefore Pilate said to him, so you are a king. Jesus answered, you say correctly that I am a king. For this I have been born, and for this I have come into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice. And that voice echoes back all the way there to Mark chapter 4. That no doubt the disciples would have pieced together, and the echo of his voice would have been, even though, what did he say? Even though you have tribulation, and you will always have tribulation in the world, I have overcome the world. I'm not concerned about it. It has no bearing on the realm I'm concerned about. It doesn't. It doesn't. Otherwise, we should fight. We should fight for it. He says, well, no, I'm not fighting. I'm not even calling angels to fight on my behalf. And in the midst of all this, some guy, face dog, skateboarding in the middle. He doesn't have a platform. He doesn't have a position. I don't know, he may be done, but at least in that little video, it didn't portray it. And that's what so many people were appealing. That was that appealed to them. And this is precisely what Jesus was trying to teach the disciples, that we still need this lesson today. Because in the midst of chaos, we have a golden opportunity to help others find peace in their life. And so the question that I have for myself is why? Why is it? Why is it that maybe we don't have others maybe asking us those questions for the hope that lies within us? Why is it that at times maybe we fail to see others tapping into the same source that we have found? Well, I just want to point to a couple things. One may be very well the thing that we talked about in our Bible class this morning that was very well covered. And it's in Philippians chapter 2. And notice he says that we need to be cautious about overly getting too much of a murmuring kind of attitude about all of these things. And there's a difference. There's a difference between being concerned. Yes, we're all concerned. I'm concerned. These things have implications for our children, for our children's children, Lord willing. Us now. There's serious things at play. Incredibly serious things at play. There's no doubt about that. There's a present sentiment of discord. And there is frustration because in the search for truth, you have lies, you have deceit, you have all kinds of things. And it makes it all the more frustrating, and people are getting wearied by it. So what is our response? That's the reality. The reality is that there is a rising level of unrest. There's a rising level of angst and anger and hatred and vileness. And they are clashing. How do we publicly enter the discourse of that? Well, he tells us there's a way that we become lights. That we do it in a different way that most everybody else isn't. And that's what he points to here, Philippians chapter 2, verse 14. He says, do all things without grumbling or disputing. We're getting so intensively involved in this that we take sides to a point of division. Why? So that you will prove yourselves to be blameless and innocent, children of God, above reproach, in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you appear as lights in the world, holding fast the word of life, so that in the day of Christ I will have reason to glory, because I did not run in vain, nor toil in vain. What we are called to do is just in the discord, in the discussion, in the debating, in the escalation of whatever it is that's being brought to our doorstep, that we keep in mind, even in those discussions, we belong to a kingdom that has no bearing and doesn't involve itself in this world. It is totally apart from it. And the things of this world cannot affect that at all. That's why Jesus demonstrated he has power over this world, but he is not obligated to exercise it over every little dispute. He will not, and he won't. He flat out at many times will be at peace, and calling us to demonstrate that same level of peace and saying, let it be so. This is what I will. This is what I want. This is what I would like to see. But what, we don't have rest until we get what we want? We're not at peace until all of our preferences are resolved? Then I can show my neighbors and show that my community that I'm unbothered and unfettered by this? That's the world. The world is anxiously waiting. They want to find out what their causes and what their wants and wishes, and they will not be settled until it's all resolved. And while all that is raging, the Savior says, is it possible for us to be asleep to that? to put it to bed. Not sitting there and hanging on to every news report that comes in about it and hanging on. And we're just so bothered and so frustrated by it. Again, I'm not saying that there aren't legitimate things that, yes, cause some attention. I get upset when I see the platforms and the different positions that, for whatever reason, people want. And why they think it's good for anybody is beyond me. But I don't belong to this world. That's what Jesus is telling me. And the more I get sucked into that level of discord, well, then there's Dogface, and people are going to look at him. Because there are going to be those who, in all the chaos and the mess, are just blissfully unaware, either willingly or unwillingly. And people are being encouraged by that. That's what he's saying about us, what we need to be providing. I don't know Dogface, but I guarantee he doesn't have these kinds of answers. I'd like for him to have these answers. It'd be great if he's using that platform and would have those kinds of answers. Pray to God that anyone in that position could have those kinds of answers. But that's the point I'm making, is that we will find ourselves on a platform in our neighborhood, in our schools, at work, online, our online presence, and how we are keeping our heads about us will provide that opportunity for further discussion about a greater kingdom that's far beyond this one. And I believe another reason that I struggle with that, why I need to be redirected, is also there in Colossians chapter 3. Colossians chapter 3, verse 1. Why is it that perhaps there are times when, in the midst of the dialogue, in the midst of the debating, it fails to rise above just present scenarios? It all depends on if I'm following this. I need to follow what Paul says about this in Colossians chapter 3. Again, and this is all pinpointed to the fact that I need to realize I've been transferred. I've been transferred out of one world into another. And because of that, my eyes need to be looking at the one I belong to. That's Paul's point. Paul says, remember, you belong to only one of two worlds. There are only two, and you belong to either one of them. Your eyes ought to be focused on the one you belong to. And he says, well, I'll tell you where you belong and where your eyes need to be. Colossians chapter 3, verse 1. Therefore, if you have been raised up with Christ to that world, keep seeking the things above where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on the things above, not on the things that are on earth. For you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is our life, is revealed, then you also will be revealed with him in glory. We belong to an amazing kingdom that teaches us to love enemies. Not compromise with enemies. Stand for the truth, but to love our enemies. To do good and to pray for our enemies. To serve and to want the very best for them. There's very little of that in this world. Very, very little. And as a result of this world that we're in, notice what have we been translated out of? Notice verse 8. What do we no longer belong to? Verse 8. But now you also put them all aside: anger, wrath, malice, slander, and abusive speech from your mouth. There's no need to resort to those kinds of tactics when someone is violently disagreeing with me. Why? Verse 9, do not lie to one another, since you laid aside the old self with its evil practices, and have put on the new self, who is being renewed to a true knowledge according to the image of the one who created him, a renewal in which there is no distinction between Greek and Jew, circumcised and uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave and freeman, but Christ is all and in all. So as those who have been chosen of God, holy and beloved, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, bearing with one another and forgiving each other. Whoever has a complaint against anyone, just as the Lord forgave you, so also should you. And notice verse 14, beyond all these things, put on love. What kind of love? What kind of love are we to put on? Turn over to the Gospel of Luke. What kind of love has he called us to put on? Luke chapter 6 and verse 27. He says, but I say to you who hear, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. Whoever hits you on the cheek, offer him the other also. And whoever takes away your coat, do not withhold your shirt from him either. Give to everyone who asks of you, and whoever takes away what is yours, do not demand it back. Treat others the same way you want them to treat you. Almost sounds like God gives us the permission and the ability to be so unaffected, at least permanently, by the ramifications of wrongdoing, evil, injustice, to a point where while everyone else is losing their heads about it, I can just be kind of just going through life and I'm just sipping my juice. What it actually says the result of this is, yes, we will be what? Singing. Our voices will be replaced with all of the anger and all the wrath and all the malice and all the hatred. Our voices will be substituted with a voice of praise, it says. Turn over to Colossians. Colossians chapter 3. What happens? What happens when I put all these things on? Well, here's this great concept, verse 15. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in one body, and be thankful. Let the word of Christ richly dwell within you with all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with thankfulness in your hearts to God. Isn't that beautiful? Where it's in many, on a more spiritual level, that's why people are drawn to this guy. Because he's not ranting, he's singing. He's not disputing, he's smiling. Does he have problems? Absolutely. It's like anybody else. And all the things that are happening surely are going to have a ramification on his life. And what these problems are either magnified or helped. But that day, yeah, it's a beautiful day. You got a skateboard, you got some motion spray. Let me sing a song. That's what Jesus says we do, or should be doing. We should have a song in our hearts that is being proclaimed about the joys of we are not shackled down to these things that have all these permanent ramifications on so many things. Yes. Do they have consequences? Yes. But what happens when I die? Apparently, I'm thankful. If my kingdom is not of this world, if I am focused on the things above, then yes, the thought of death, it should be a thankful one. That's what he's saying. The thought of death. Now, what's going to happen when I'm no longer here? Well, I'm released. I'm freed. It's no longer affecting me. That's why he says, notice what he says, let the word of Christ, verse 16, richly dwell within you with all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another with psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, singing with thankfulness in your heart to God. Whatever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks through him to God the Father. And very quickly, the reason why sometimes we don't do that is because of Proverbs 17 and verse 24. Read this warning of Proverbs 17, I think, is a good word of wisdom to think about in light of all the things that we should and could be thinking about and praising God for and focusing our attention on. But notice Proverbs 17 and verse 24 says, wisdom is in the presence of the one who has understanding, but the eyes of a fool are on the ends of the earth. They're focused on this problem and that problem and ramifications of if this happens and this doesn't happen, well, the world's going to go in this direction. And again, I'm not saying that I have zero interest. I do. What a blessing that we're in a republic and a democracy, that we have some ability to fight to some degree in a democracy. But we also have an obligation and a calling from God to be a light in the midst of all of this. Not, well, what's the light? Well, I'll tell you what the light is after all this gets figured out. No! What does that light say right now? What does it say at this moment? That's what we are called to do. To be able to praise God and have this joyful attitude regardless of whatever the outcome is of all these things. And one final passage, we turn to Matthew chapter 6, and one perhaps reason why we fail this is, notice Matthew chapter 6, beginning in verse 8, is because I don't put my trust in the king who is overseeing all this. And I love what he says. Matthew chapter 6, verse 8 says, do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. Pray then in this way, our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. You know, it's amazing how in the midst of praying, in November, let this happen. Or in December, let this be. Or in this, I'm not saying that it's, yes, go to God for all things, anxious thoughts, whatever it is, pray about it. But we run the risk, if all of our thoughts to the ends of the earth, all the consequences of the earth, and we forget to have the ability to say, I can pray this day, God can resolve all of the issues of life, even as unresolved as they may be yet in the future. For me, why? Because I'm not bound to this. At least I shouldn't be. And we shouldn't be, to the point where we can't have any joy, we can't have any sense of peace. And that's the beauty of the kingdom, is that by faith, like Jesus, in that boat, with all the chaos, we can be at peace. And will there be people saying, well, I can't believe, why are you not wild about all this? Always be ready to have an answer for the hope that lies within you. That's what we do. But good luck having an answer if we don't have that hope. That's the point that Jesus is saying. We better have that hope and that concept so that people ask us and we can resolve it that way. But in these circumstances, Jesus is a great example for us to practice that and to pass that message along. We pass that simple message to anyone who's with us who's never obeyed the gospel of Jesus Christ. We pray that you also may see that that's exactly what Jesus is calling you to be a part of. To be a part of a kingdom that settles all of these conflicts in a very simple, powerful way of basically saying, if I wanted to, he could calm all this and he could resolve it and he could orchestrate it. You know, just like in a game of Risk, If Jesus could with a word say, okay, I want all the armies on this continent, and I want all these people there, and I want these people occupying here, and it could be resolved. It could be settled. Everything in an instant. But rather, he calls us to say, there's something else, though, that I can set up for you right now. That all these other things may take some time before they're all unraveled. And it is what's going to happen to you when and if you die. Can you be at peace about that? And so many times we tend to be like the man building the barns. Not with possessions, but with outcomes. If I get this outcome here, and I have this outcome over here, and when this outcome, then I can be at peace. Wow, what? You fool. This day your soul is required of you, and who are all these other things going to matter to? That's what we're talking about. Let us be at all times ready to be at peace with that answer and ready to help others be able to make that same answer as well. And we want to help anyone who's with us who's never obeyed the gospel of Jesus Christ to be able to full-heartedly say with all a good conscience that you are ready to meet God, that you have died to the sins of this world, that you are allowing yourself to be transferred out of the kingdom of darkness to the kingdom of light, and that you want to give your whole hope and your desire to the things of his kingdom, and that should give you peace, and to just walk with him and serve him and love others as you love him and be ready to meet with him when all this is over. If you've never done that, we encourage you, won't you come to the front? We'll gladly help and assist you to put Christ on a baptism while we stand and sing this song of encouragement. Won't you come while we stand and sing?